What if everything we think we know about addiction, about choice and free will, is just plain wrong? It's easy to think we get it, but there's this deep philosophical mystery lurking just beneath the surface, and it kind of flips the whole script. So let's dig in.
Okay, so the whole thing really boils down to this one question, right? Is addiction a choice? I mean, when you see someone using over and over, even when it's wrecking their life, are they acting freely? Well, trust me, the answer is way more complicated than a simple yes or no.
To really get our heads around this puzzle, let's picture two totally different people. First, you've got the unwilling addict. This is probably who you think of, right? Someone who absolutely hates their addiction, they're fighting it tooth and nail every single day. But then, there's the willing addict. This person makes almost no effort to stop and might even tell you, yeah, I want this. This is my choice. And this is where things get really tricky. I mean, it's pretty obvious how the unwilling addict's freedom, their autonomy, is messed up. They're trapped in a fight they never asked for. But what about the willing addict? When they say they choose this, is that a genuinely free choice? Is that real autonomy we're seeing? That's the heart of the mystery we need to crack. Okay, so the first place we should look for clues is traditional philosophy. For a long time, people saw addiction as basically a battle of willpower. Simple as that. These are called mismatch theories. And the basic idea is that addiction gets in the way of your autonomy because it creates a clash between what you do, use drugs, and what you really truly want deep down, which is to be clean. It's all framed as this massive failure of self-control.
And this theory breaks down into two main types. So you've got the now problem. This is that conflict in the heat of the moment where the immediate craving for the drug just steamrolls the bigger desire to quit. Then there's the time problem, which is more of a long game thing. A long-term goal like sobriety just gets totally sabotaged by a short-sighted decision in the moment.
But here's the thing. These theories have a huge, glaring hole. They explain the unwilling addict perfectly, right? The person who's always fighting and losing. But they just completely fall apart when you try to apply them to the willing addict, the person who says they're not fighting at all. So clearly, we're missing a piece of the puzzle.
So what if this isn't about willpower at all? What if the real key, the missing piece, is something deeper? What if it's all about our emotions?
And this leads us to a really powerful concept, emotional dysregulation. This is what happens when someone starts using drugs not just to get high, but as their number one tool for just coping with life, to numb pain, to feel less anxious, to feel confident. It becomes a coping strategy, a really, really bad one.
And this bad strategy, it creates this brutal, vicious cycle. So you feel bad, you use the drug to escape, but then it wears off, and guess what? Those bad feelings come rushing back, and a lot of the time they're even worse. And that, of course, just makes the craving stronger, pulling you deeper and deeper into the trap.
And right here, this is where we start to see the solution to our mystery. Because this cycle doesn't just trap someone, it fundamentally changes who they are. It rewires what they even care about. Think about it this way. Over time, relying on a drug to manage every feeling essentially poisons the field. It makes every other source of joy or value in life, your family, your hobbies, your career, seem kind of dull and lifeless in comparison. The drug becomes the only thing that really feels good, the only thing that seems to matter.
This is what's called the crowding out effect. The world of drug use becomes so intense, so emotionally charged, that it shoves everything else out of the picture. Your old values start to crumble. Your interests just fade away. So here's the key. The will isn't being overpowered in some grand battle. No, the will itself is slowly, quietly, being rewritten by a process that the person isn't even consciously controlling.
To make this real, just listen to the story of a man we'll call John. When he was deep in his alcoholism, a sober life wasn't just something he didn't want. It was literally unimaginable. He just couldn't wrap his head around the idea that life could possibly be good or even bearable without alcohol. But now, fast forward. After 11 years of sobriety, his entire perspective is different. Looking back, he realizes that the person who thought an alcoholic life was the only way, that wasn't the real him. His values, his whole sense of self, had been hijacked and rewired by the addiction. So, okay, we've cracked the mystery. The willing addict might not be truly free because their will, the very thing that makes their choices, has been reshaped by a process outside their control. So why does a philosophical idea like this actually matter in the real world? Well, it's absolutely crucial for some really high-stakes ethical questions. For instance, think about this. Can a person who is severely addicted to heroin give truly free and informed consent to be in a clinical trial where they'll be given heroin? I mean, the answer to that life or death question depends entirely on whether we think their yes is actually their own.
So let's look at how these two views stack up. The old mismatch theory says the problem is a failure of willpower, and because of that, it sees the willing addict as autonomous. But this new emotional dysregulation view says, no, the problem is that their values have been rewired, which means the willing addict might actually lack true autonomy. And that totally changes the ethical debate. It shifts it from, is this person being rational, to a much deeper question.
And that question is about a capacity called appreciation. Now, this isn't just about understanding facts on a piece of paper like, okay, sobriety is healthy. It's the ability to feel the personal weight of those facts, to really imagine, connect with, and value what a different future would actually be like.
And this is the bombshell, really. The very same process, emotional dysregulation, that drives the addiction can also destroy this ability to appreciate a different kind of life. It can make it almost impossible to truly feel the value of the alternative. And if you can't do that, how can you give fully informed consent?
So, let's pull it all together. We can see now that addiction is so much more than a simple failure of willpower. It's often a disorder of emotional coping that can literally rewrite a person's values from the inside out. And that completely challenges our basic ideas of what it even means to be free. And that leaves us with one final, massive question to think about. If a person's deepest wants and values can be reshaped by a process they don't control, what does that mean for how we, as a society, should treat them? How does it change our ideas about recovery, about responsibility, and maybe most importantly of all, about compassion?